here from Backpacking Light, and today I'm going to talk about the Hilleberg Helags. This is the 2-man tent, and then there's also a 3-man version, and this is Hilleberg's newest tent for 2021. It's a big tent, still lightweight but big. This one weighs 2.4 kilos, and that's with the tent poles and all the tent pegs and guidelines and so on. So it's about the same weight as something like the Hilleberg Swallow, but considerably different and much bigger tent. This one is more like an oversized Anjan, where the Anjan really cuts weight by kind of getting rid of the ventilation and, you know, making just a smaller, tighter tent. This one is more focused on total living area, I guess you can call it. So I'll go ahead and set this up. This is the Kirlon 20 denier ripstop nylon on the outer tent. It's 50 denier floor and 10 denier on the inner tent. So pretty standard for their lightweight series. I guess it's the yellow, I could be wrong, but the yellow label tents. And yeah, I'll go ahead and set it up, tunnel tent. Yeah, so as you can see, this is the Helag 2 setup. It borrows heavily from the Anjan 2. It's a very similar design, and they've kind of opted out of the top ventilation that you see in something like the Nalo, and basically they have this, you know, exactly like the Anjan, where you have the ventilation along the bottom. Now I find that ventilation to work absolutely, you know, it's a very well working ventilation for the mountains and so on. As you can see, these cuts are quite large, and it's quite difficult to get the tent really solid pitch to the ground like you can do on some of their other series tents, but you wouldn't want to, as that's where your ventilation is. As I said, it's an Anjan 2, but just a considerably bigger tent. It's got a lot of the same features, a lot of the same design ideas and so on. And I'll go ahead and open this up. So this is one option of having the vestibule open. And this will work for most situations, especially in the mountains where there can be rain and everything else. And you know, it's certainly big enough for 2 backpacks. You know, it's a nice size vestibule if you want, like this, or completely open. Now I don't need to do that right now. I just kind of want to show the different options of that. So go ahead and get in. Now this tent, I don't know what the actual specs on the maximum height of the user is, but I'm guessing it's around 2 meters. And that's and that's not an overestimation or being hyperbolic. It's just a very long tent. Me laying lengthwise, there's a good this amount of space between my feet, and that's with, you know, plenty of room for my head as well. And I'm 190, and it's very wide as well. Now what's cool about this tent is that even on the back side, it has the exact same vestibule and entryway, and the walls are really steep in it, so there's definitely, you're not going to be complaining for space in a tent like this. I'll go ahead and show the other side as well. And like all the Hilleberg tents, they've kind of gone over to these standard clam cleats now. The line is quite thin. It's got to be 2 millimeters, I'm guessing, somewhere around there, maybe 2.5 at the most. But you don't really need much more than that, so. So here is the double entry, as you can see in this. And I'll go ahead and lay down. It's going to be hard to see just because of how I have to film this. But I'll put my head as far back in that side so that you can kind of get an idea of how much room is in here. I actually feel small in this tent. It's so big. It's actually kind of silly. And you know, I have to be honest, when Hilleberg had first introduced this tent, I thought it was an April Fool's joke because it was just so ridiculously large. But when I started looking at the specs and when I set it up, yeah, you know, it's actually, I can definitely see the use. And for somebody like me who just won't share a tent with anybody, and you know, if I could, I'd push my kids out onto their own little tents, but they're unfortunately 6 and 7 years old, so they don't really like sleeping in their own tents. But for me and my kids, or me and my wife, like if she forces herself and actually wants to be in the tent with me, then yeah, I could definitely see myself using this tent for those situations. And I have used it for me and my kids. And for me and 2 kids, my boys, you know, anyway, for me and my boys, it's actually a very nice, roomy tent. And at 2.4 kilos for such a large tent, for so much space, you know, it's actually rather unique on the market because Hilleberg uses lightweight materials, but still creates such a large tent. And you don't really see that. I mean, the closest I can think of is the tarp tent Hogback, which is also a very big, roomy tent. But it's not something I would actually use in the mountains in the same way I would use this. I mean, this is a proper 3-season, and you know, you've seen me use my Anion GT in the winter, and I would easily use this in the winter as well. It's just such a big, comfortable tent, and I really like that. You know, it's not something I would carry if I'm walking by myself, of course, but if I am sharing the tent, and I have to actually share a tent with somebody, whether it's my kids or a friend, or you know, a hiking friend, whatever, it's definitely something I would think about, because then you're splitting the weight, you know, between 2 people. You're looking at 1.2 kilos each, and if you're with your kids and you want actual comfort, it's not a bad tent, and it is ridiculously large. So I hope I've done a fairly decent, you know, overview of the Hilleberg Helags, and I've kind of shown the double entry exits here, as well as the overall size. I'll go get in the middle here, kind of show. I mean, you can tell it's a very large, wide tent. You're not going to find better comfort for the weight and size, you know, and especially being a proper mountain tent as well. So I hope you like the overview. Ken, Backpacking Light. If you like the video, subscribe. You can buy the tents at backpackinglight.sc in Sweden, .dk throughout Europe. Cheers.